All of a sudden, I'm being extricated out of that space and then being pushed forward into this abject blackness. I need to just find a glimmer of light. And as it's growing, it's like everywhere, everything is the light. All of the trauma that you've ever had, all of the sadness, all of the fears, all of the pain and suffering that you may have, it's gone. There's none of that. It's just love. It's just joyful bliss. I had gotten to a place in my life where I didn't know where I was going and what I was doing. My daughter was 6 years old. I had gone through a divorce, which I never had expected to have. And I was lost and needed to know what was the next logical step for me. And I had not a clue. I had been doing the same thing, which was modeling for about 17 years. And it came to the place where I needed to stop. It was no longer okay for me to do the work. I think I was at the age where it wasn't, as viable for me. And I just had no sense of where I was going. And at that time, my parents were both dead. So I didn't have elders to go to kind of confer with and find out, what did they think of where I was in my life and what I could do with it. And so on a day when I was feeling particularly low and kind of panic-stricken about it, I went to church. And at that time, I wouldn't say I was terribly religious, but I had grown up as a kind of a pious kid. I believed in the lives of the saints and whatnot, and communicating with the saints and all of that good Catholic upbringing. And at this point, I'm in church and I'm begging and pleading for guidance, for help, because I didn't have anybody to go to at that point in time. And it was like, I know God's there for me, but I don't know if it's tangible, if I'm going to hear something or know something. I just needed to plead my case. And I felt better having just divested my feelings about that. And a few days later, I think it was less than a week, I was due to have arthroscopic surgery on my left leg. I had had a swimming accident in Acapulco with my husband, and I almost drowned because I was getting out of the water. There was a lot of undertow, and I was getting tired. He was a swimmer. He was a really good swimmer. He'd played water polo for years in Italy, and I was a good swimmer, but I wasn't that strong. And so I decided it's time to get out. So as I'm getting out, there's an incline to the beach, and I put my foot forward as I'm going up, and a wave hit me from behind, and it pushed on me, and at the same time it kind of pulled me around, and my foot was stuck in the sand, so I totally dislocated my knee. Tore cartilage, ligaments, had chip bone fragments, had a blood clot, had all kinds of things going on. So I'm back in the water, and all I can do is hold my knee because I'm in so much pain, because knee pain is really icky, nauseating pain. And he grabbed me, thank God, and pulled me out. If he hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have made it. And I had waited 10 years to have the surgery for this because as a working model, I didn't want the big patella surgery where they open up your kneecap. It's a big scar. So I waited the 10 years to have it, and I went in to have my arthroscopic surgery to repair it finally, 10 years later. And I'm sitting on the gurney and I'm freezing. I'm absolutely freezing. And I hadn't had any medication yet. And one of the nurses came up to me and she said, "Would you like a warm blanket?" And I thought, wow, I'd love that. I didn't know they could do that. And she gave me that, and that just calmed my body down a lot because I was racking with cold. And the next thing I knew, we went into the surgical suite. I transferred onto the operating table and whatnot. And I started up with the cold again. And they gave me another blanket, and that calmed things down, and I relaxed enough that I went to sleep, which is really kind of weird to do that before your anesthesia kicks in. And maybe it was a precursor for me of something that was coming, I don't know. But they did the surgery, it all went fine, and I awakened in recovery. And while I'm in recovery, I'm hearing all this noise going on. And, I'm kind of in my fuzzy state, and I don't really want to pay attention to what's going on over there. But I know there's something big going on over there. And all of a sudden I hear them saying, "Dianne, wake up, Dianne, wake up." And I thought, wow, where does that? We have the same name. Then I kind of waft back into my world, and a few minutes later I'm hearing, "Dianne Sherman, wake up, Dianne Sherman, wake up." And I'm thinking, well, what's up with that? If they got the wrong person, did they do the wrong surgery? What the hell's happening? So I'm waving at them, trying to get their attention to say, "Hi, I'm here, I'm Dianne Sherman, what's happening?" And they're not paying any attention to me whatsoever. And I'm thinking, okay, well, they're trying to save this person's life, so I guess, they're really busy, and that's why it's occurring that way. And the next thing I know, I am standing at the foot of that person's bed, looking up as I'm looking at you, looking up at her. And I realize it's me. But I don't have any connection to the me that I'm looking at. It's just the most neutral, normal sense of that person in the bed. It has nothing to do with me. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't concerned. I didn't have any care about that person. And I remember standing there going, looking down at myself and looking back up at her and seeing both of me. And as I'm sort of pondering that, the next thing I know, I am now floating up in the corner of the room. And I'm now looking over everything that's going on. And even though I'm fascinated, I'm still not connected in any way. Whatever the outcome is, it's almost like it doesn't matter to me. It's not my business. My business was to be right where I was, which was being very present. I hadn't experienced being present like that before. So after being in the corner and watching what's going on, the next thing I knew is I'm being extricated out of that space and then being pushed forward into this abject blackness. That kind of blackness was a scary place for me. I was terrified of the dark when I was a kid. My first thought was, I need to just find a glimmer of light, just one little tiny glimmer of light. If I can see that, then I know, first of all, I'm not blind, that I can hang on and find some kind of safety net here. And as I'm fixating on it, I see it, and I just sort of like hold on to the focus of that. And as I'm doing that, it's starting to grow. And as it's growing, it's coming closer to me. And now it's like everywhere, everything is the light. I'm surrounded by it, and I'm moving in to the light. It's fascinating because the color of it has all the colors of the rainbow in it, and yet it's a color of white I've never seen. It's got a quality to it that's diaphanous and ephemeral, and then it's that sense of loving and caring about me. And as I'm moving in and through this light, it starts to part. And as it parts, I'm seeing in front of me 2 rows of monks. in brown robes with the hoods up, and I'm watching myself floating through them, and I stop, and I remember looking down that I could see the ground, and I was about that far off the ground. Don't know why, but I was floating, and I thought that was funny. And I get to the end where this one monk steps out, and he speaks to me, and I always say he, because he felt masculine and in charge and very benevolent and loving. And I could feel the energies from the monks who were facing me as I'm floating through them. And it was all loving and supportive. And he steps in front of me and he says, "It's not your time, you cannot stay." I looked at him and I said, "But I feel like I just found home. How can you send me back when I finally found what I've been searching for my whole life? I mean, I've been married, I have a child, I've had a career, I've had wonderful things happen, but none of them ever fed me the way this feeling feels. I am here, I'm home." And he said, "It's not your time, you cannot stay, you have a child." And I started thinking about my daughter and wondering, oh, what do I do about that, you know? And even though she was 6 years old, I loved her with all my heart. Still do, of course, but I still wanted to stay, which was shocking to me that the pull to be there was that big. So as I'm thinking about who could take care of her, my ex-husband was my ex-husband for a reason, and I had full custody of my daughter. My parents were both gone. My sister was not emotionally stable enough to be a loving influence for my daughter. I had traveled quite a bit with my husband, and so we hadn't landed in a place where we created deep friendships where there would be people there who would take care of her. And in that moment of realization that there wasn't anybody who would love her the way I wanted her to be loved and cared for, I was back in my body. And the next thing I realized was I was in my hospital room. It's a really awful sensation being back in my body, because when you're on the other side, when you're out of your physical body, first of all of the trauma that you've ever had, all of the sadness, all of the fears, all of the pain and suffering that you may have, it's gone. There's none of that. It's just love. It's just joyful bliss. And now you're shoved back into this small form because we're huge when we're in spirit. We're much smaller when we're in human, because it's like a doctor putting on scrubs, you know. Here's this big spirit putting on this human outfit. And that's what allows us to maneuver around, because we have to have human form in order to be able to do things. Everything that I wanted to run away from, get help with, all came screaming back to me. And it was devastating to be in that awareness and all those feelings. From there, I think the most extreme awareness that I had that something had happened, because in those moments of coming back, I had no idea what had happened during surgery or after surgery or in recovery. I had gone out to dinner with my sister, and we went to a restaurant that we'd been to many times, very comfortable there, know it well. And I walk in, and all of a sudden there's this cacophony of voices and information and people talking and people's pain and suffering and people's fears and hurts. And I'm hearing and feeling all of it. It's like this wave coming at me. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I'm becoming psychotic. There's something radically wrong with me. Now, in 1981, if I told my priest I was hearing all these voices and whatnot, you know, he wouldn't have had any good words for me about that. He would have said I'm a heretic or I'm possessed or whatever it was. if I'd gone to the doctor, he may have put me on a 72-hour hold. I had no one to discuss this with. And it was shocking and overwhelming and devastating. I didn't know what had occurred. And what I later found out is that I was coming online to the clairs, clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, all of that stuff, and that I was a full-on empath to other people's awarenesses, feelings and thoughts and whatnot. And I had to learn through the years how to coordinate that stuff, how to handle that stuff, how to calm it down. And I was lucky enough to be led to the perfect people who taught me how to meditate and taught me about what experience I had had, and to educate me in what to do with it and how to handle it, and who I was becoming. And those were huge lessons on every level, because it's like having somebody go in and just turn everything in your brain around that you ever knew, ever took for granted, it was your truth, blah, blah. All of a sudden it's all different. And it's been growth ever since then. And since 1981, I have still wanted to go back. And now at 78, almost 79, I'm closer to ever going back. And I'm really excited about that, because I know what's there. I know what I'm going to experience, and I know how lovely it is, how unconditional loving it is, and that I've done everything I ever wanted to do.